problems there in trouble. Because, Tommaso seek a even a proof of doctors. I said to him, I'm not your boss. I got a proof of his doctor certificate here now. He could not come from Italy here, but he booked already ticket everything, so it's lost. And then Professor Sophie, she's here. We got Jan Taves is joining the team in terms of the finance policy, because most of the people there was also in the finance policies. So we want to have the finance policies. We're going to mix it with investment. So, and Noadine is joining them as a moderator to replace Tommaso. So we got Jan from the IFC. We have Oscar from the Dutch
ECA,
ECA,
State Business, yes.
And the Professor Sophie. And then we got Mr. Noadine. So I think everything. We have only 30 minutes, guys, so we can rush off time.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the introduction. So I don't have to introduce my panel, it's already introduced. My name is Nordin Gribi. I'm a Dutch guy in a Moroccan jacket. I live all my life in Holland, but I'm original from Morocco. And I'm passionate about energy transition. And one of the projects I have realized in 2020 is the cooperation between Holland and Morocco in energy, in green energy. And let my panel introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, I'm Sophie Corbeau. I am a global research scholar at the Center on Global Energy Policy, which is part of Columbia University. My specialties are gases in general, so natural gas, biomethane, and hydrogen. And I am based in Paris. And I am the only survivor of this panel, which I have decided to merge with another panel. And these guys are belonging to the panel which was originally scheduled at 4 o'clock.
Yes, we thank you, Sophie, for being able to join you. Oscar Boot, I work for Tradius Dutch State Business, which is the Dutch Export Credit Agency. On behalf of the Dutch government, we support Dutch export of capital goods and construction works. What we do is we have a range of credit supporting tools, guarantee products that can help with projects by giving Dutch exporters liquidity, but also we give guarantees towards the financing banks, so the foreign buyers or the project owners can benefit from attractive financing coming from the Netherlands together with the export. So we do see what we do for the Dutch exports. The Germans have the same scheme, the Belgians have the same scheme. So a lot of OECD countries have the same scheme. And we do see an important role for these ECA-backed financing schemes in hydrogen projects.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Jan Tanves. I'm a Senior Investment Officer at the International Finance Corporation, which is a private sector arm of the World Bank. I have a background in energy sector, essentially, and I'm responsible for new business in Mauritania. And I'm following hydrogen in Mauritania as well as to some extent in Morocco, and I'm responsible for new business for Africa when it comes to decentralized renewable energy. Yes, IFC is one of the largest capital provider for infrastructure in the emerging market. Hydrogen is of course a priority for us, and I look forward to telling you more about it. And thank you for having me, to the organizer.
Well, thank you very much. Oscar, I have a question for you about fair and just transition and the challenging of financing green hydrogen projects. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yes, I think from a Dutch point of view, but also from an EU point of view, it's been made very clear that it must be a just transition for everybody. We need green hydrogen, but we also need the supplying countries to benefit from these projects. All these projects are projects that need some kind of partnership for 30 plus years. That only works if both parties are happy. What we do see that in the countries that are well positioned to supply the green hydrogen, there's a need for job creation, there's a need for skills, there's a need for water, and there's a need for energy. And if you do it well, the hydrogen projects can solve a lot of these problems. Because with the production of hydrogen, there is the need for a lot of water, energy, and of course, job creation, skill creation is part of that. And from the Dutch government and from the EU, there's been understandings between us and the supplying countries that have anchored in their knowledge sharing, things like that. So it must be a win-win situation.
Thank you very much. Sophie, as a woman in this panel, I know from my sisters, if I visit them, they are always very welcome and very warm. So how do you see how we can create a synergy and trust to Africans who are willing to invite us to do business in their country?
So I think, you need to put things in context first. We talk a little bit about Europe wanting to import hydrogen. I think, the 10 million ton objective which was given by REPowerEU is still quite far away. And actually, there are very few countries in the world which want to really import hydrogen. And even in Europe, it's a mixed bag. Only a few countries really want to import hydrogen, among them mostly Germany, which I think a lot of countries have already seen, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, the Czech Republic, but it's very limited. And then you have a couple of Asian countries, Japan, Korea, Singapore. And that's it, pretty much. And if you're looking at all the hydrogen strategies which have been published to date, you have, out of the 58, 42 countries which want to export hydrogen. So the competition will be tough, which is also very important for the investment, because if you are saying, okay, I am going to export and therefore I can get some dollars and this is going to be easier in terms of the investment profile, etc. Well, not everybody will have a share in the cake, or else the share is going to be very small. So that is a big problem. And I would tell the Africans exactly the same thing as I've told the Brazilian 3 days ago, because I was participating in a conference about the Brazil Climate Summit. Be a little bit selfish. And this is where I rejoin the comments which was made before. Also think about yourself, think about your own development, and think about what is going to be easy to transport, if anything. So HBI, I 100% agree. If you have iron ore deposits, develop your local industry with indeed the renewable hydrogen, and then you can, maybe, try to upgrade that to grid steel or send the HBI to Europe. That would be way much easier than trying to develop liquid hydrogen or whatever. If you are looking at all the means to transport hydrogen, there are two which are really leading. Pipeline, for the countries which are in the north, or ammonia. And the rest, well, people are relatively uncertain. Green steel has not been mentioned by many strategies so far, but I think this is something quite important to consider. However, it does have implications for the industrial sector in Europe. But remember, I think it was 2 or maybe 3 months ago, I can't quite remember, the European President Commission, Mrs. van der Leyen, she went to Mauritania and she said to Mauritania, this is fantastic. You have, great potential in terms of renewable energy. You have iron ore deposits, so you could be exporting green steel to Europe, which is actually a very interesting message. I was just wondering whether she had actually talked to the European industrials before she made that statement.
Yes.
But, it's also important that you have companies which have, good expertise developing the project. So this is where, some European companies can help, because they have the expertise in terms of developing maybe not hydrogen projects, but significant size projects. So this is why, we are seeing some friends from the joint venture with Technip. We have seen Siemens, etc. This is where the know-how is actually used. And I will stop there.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. What we have in Morocco, Morocco have a clear message. They don't want to be an export country. but they are looking for partners who are willing to help building the local ecosystem, and export is part of the transition. So I think that will be the main reason for countries to invite countries to do business with, if they are also looking at the benefits of the locals. What do you think about that?
It's coming back to the point I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's a long-term partnership
Yeah.
with, it needs to be beneficial for all parties, but especially the local people. Otherwise, it doesn't work for long partnerships.
Last year I was in southern of Morocco, where EFC has a big event in Guilmim, where I am privileged to work closely with the president Mbaka Boueda, who is organized it. And we are now in a stage that we are cooperated with 2 other regions, one in Germany and one in Holland, to work on the ecosystem closely together. And I was very happy, surprised that EFC is putting all the efforts to help finance also the local capacity and building up, and so that the countries in Africa can own the transition, and that I will thank you for it, and I would love to see more of that activity in other countries, because Morocco has a very good message. They said acquirements. They said we are happy to have you here with all the delegations, but you need to share it with our brothers in Africa. So that's why I inviting everyone, and I hope that we'll do next time with Trezeguet, that we want to create a platform where every knowledge and every data can share with everyone, because I think environment and transition has no nationality. Yeah.
Yes. No, thanks for this. I'm based in Morocco, so one day we should have meeting. And this is and I could not agree more with you guys, and this is particularly why we have, for example, a partnership with OCP.
Yes.
Who has a 7 billion plan for green ammonia, and we're already supporting their ramp up in terms of renewable generation for their actual operation, but also positioning ourselves as a long-term partner in their transformation toward green fertilizers. And I think that's one of the key. But perhaps we don't have much time, right? But so I prepared a bit of key message around bankability,
Yes.
which I understand
Please.
this is what you wanted me to
It's
talk
all
about.
about finance at the end.
Yeah, about finance. So look, a couple of things. Our estimate is that to reach net zero by 2050 globally, we need about 900 gigawatt of electrolyzer and 1,800 gigawatt of renewable energy, and that's 2.7 trillion investment opportunity or challenge, depending on how you look at it. So we'll be part of it, obviously. Despite that opportunity, today we have around 1,000 large-scale green hydrogen projects announced, large share of that in the emerging market. 10% of those have reached final investment decision, FID. Those that have reached FID are around 50 to 200 megawatt, so rather small compared to what's needed. The question we ask ourselves, look, we're a lender, we're a financier, so we typically arrive at the end of the party when everything is ready, and we put lawyers on the case and we put financing into the project. However, this is so strategic for us and for the global economy more generally, that we're investing upfront and we're part of projects development. The question for us is, how do we make sure at this stage that we can accompany project development and governments in making sure that the projects are developed in a way that is bankable for us to inject $1 billion that the hydrogen world needs, and others, obviously. Because if we can invest, we assume that others will follow, and our job is also to mobilize additional commercial investment. There are 5 to simplify there are 5 key bankability issues that we look for already in the project today, and that will play a role tomorrow when we reach investment stage. One is technology, particularly for electrolyzers. Technology is not new, it's been here for 100 years and so, but at scale, it's a different ballgame. And when you look at it from a financing perspective, you have a couple of issues. One is the first mover disadvantage. We see, projection with high cost decline, like we've seen in PV and batteries before. What does it mean for the project that start today? You'll have a price disadvantage. Supply chain, will it follow? Will it follow the development of the project? And if it doesn't, then that's delayed, that's financial loss, so that's something we look at closely. Warranties, there are limited warranties for electrolyzer at that scale at the moment. And for us to put financing for 15 to 20 years, that's key. And then replacement, life of electrolyzer is 7 to 15 years. You need to make sure you have the capital there. And you need to know whether it's 7 to 15, different game on the investment side. So that's for the technology, big focus on the electrolyzer technology and the uncertainty around it and how you mitigate that. The second is power. Power, as we see, we have a global view, so we analyze a bit the project that comes to us. It's around 70%, up to 70% of the cost of project. That's okay, renewable, we know to do it, we know to finance it. The question there, it's not the production, it's more the transmission toward the electrolyzer facility. So particularly in Africa, you're producing electricity in areas where there is no transmission. And if there is, we're looking at very weak grids that cannot accommodate the level of electricity you're wanting to produce. I work closely in Mauritania and other geographies. We're looking at project of accumulation of project of around 50 gigawatt and so on. But the installed capacity is 500 megawatt. And frankly, to integrate 50 megawatt of VRE into the network, it's already a challenge, and people are curtailing electricity. How do you fit that into your grid? The question. And then you have arrangement, let's say the grid is more developed, you have the energy banking arrangement where you produce, you feed into the grid, you get it back. It's all good, but you have some risk there with the off-taker, particularly the political off-taker, let's say European countries, on what do they qualify as green. If you start losing your production within the grid, when it comes back, will it fit the requirement of the European Union in 10 years' time? Question mark. So that's a key thing for us, power, and particularly the transmission infrastructure. The third one, which is essential in Africa, and we see a barrier in many countries, is what we call enabling infrastructure. We're talking about ports. Whether you're exporting fuel or derivative, you need deep sea ports. Many times there is none, and so that's a question. Roads, you need large roads, not only to start to get your electrolyzer on site. You need large roads. In Mauritania, you don't have that. So you need to invest into the road. That's a huge infrastructure project, takes time. And water, obviously. A lot of countries don't have water at the moment, and so that would mean desalination, which is in itself large infra. And so you're integrating many large, complex infra projects into a larger mega project, and that has not been done. And there's a question of doing it, integrating it, and then there's a question of that integration of that infra plan for that project, which is massive, with the infra plans of the country. How is that relevant to the country? How does that speak to the country? And there's a lot of work that needs to go into. Then competitiveness and offtake, I'll be quick on that, but you all know it. Green hydrogen costs today 2 to 3 times more than gray hydrogen, so it's a politically driven price. Again, we're here to put money for 15 to 20 years into those projects. It's very difficult. And here comes the importance of local offtake, not only for acceptability, but also for bankability. And you need a strong corporate, so the project we will support will need to have a significant share of that production going to a strong corporate that can offtake part of the product. Because if you don't have that, if you're betting on a merchant market that doesn't exist today, and with high level of uncertainty of what it will look like in 10 years, is just something we can't finance. The last point sorry, I'm a bit long, is land and ENS, obviously. Already a question in power project, but here we're talking massive power projects. And so how do you manage that? And it's certainly something we have expertise in. But in an African context, a wider question for me is, I work on access as well, access to electricity. I mean, average access rate in Africa is 47%. In many of the countries we're talking about, it's around 20%. How do you go about building, 5 to 10 times electricity that will be required to electrify a country and exporting it somewhere or to the industry? I mean, how is that morally and politically acceptable is a key question, I think, for the industry, and where I think we collectively need to do a bit more work on. I'll finish by saying how we intervene and how we look for. So as I said, we have a global hydrogen team in Washington, D.C. We have offices virtually in every country, and we have government relation in every country. Government come to me, to ask for support on developing and investing into their green hydrogen plants. We look for, of course, government support, and that's a given. I mean, governments want those forex revenues, and so they're pushy on hydrogen. And what I tell to government, and my colleagues do as well, is well and good, fantastic, be careful, do not sign too many MOUs with everyone and their grandmother, because at the end of the day, you're losing my confidence, and you're losing the market's confidence. So go support, but rational a bit, and with planning. I mean, governments need to invest in planning. The second is a strong local offtake, I mentioned it. The third is strong sponsors that can execute and integrate, because frankly that's not a given. Enabling infrastructure, as I said. Availability of support mechanisms, so some form of grant or viability gap financing. I have seen there's carbon credit discussion as well. So all of that. And the last point, which is very important, is yes, I understand the end game is 10, 20, 30 gigawatt, fine. And you need to announce that, you need to provide the vision. But if you want to get my attention and for us to cooperate, let's be realistic and let's phase this out, right? Because of the risk of integration execution, but also because of the first mover disadvantage, frankly. So we'll be supporting smaller projects with ambition, with strong sponsors, but we'll do it. And while we intervene at the end of the process, while we finance the deal, we're willing to put resources, both human and some financial resources, in project development, again, to accompany sponsors and consortium in making sure and giving you feedback along the way of development, and making sure that what you develop, at the end, we can finance. And so that's how we intervene. And so if you have we're open for business. So I'm here. If you want my email, you can have it, and we can discuss. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You make me happy, because our vision, our project has all requirements, so I know we are going on the right way. Because this panel is about finance, I think some people in the audience want to ask a question. Please. Can I have? Yeah, you can have one.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jan, for this explanation. I think you were not here in the morning, so just to present myself again, my name is Fadel Seman. I'm the founder of Pegasus Logistics, which is a company that works in supply chain private sector in Mauritania. I know that IFC has been more and more present in Mauritania, with your director, Mr. Job, coming more often to Mauritania, and also see the impact that IFC is having right now in Africa. This morning we've pushed the discussion further. We've talked about infrastructure, the main point that you mentioned, especially the case of Mauritania. But I was wondering, in terms of private sector, for local companies and local workforce, do you have plans? And if yes, if you can quickly brush on that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, again, as I said, make sure that countries' economies benefit from those projects not being off-taker. it's one, a bankability question, but it's also a strategic question, and it goes together. So this needs to be looked at. We as IFC, although we intervene in that, so two ways, right? One is on advisory, so we can advise project in development, but also in operation, on how to best engage local supply chain, local stakeholders, and so on. And that's something we've done for decades in the mining business, for instance. And we have strong partnership with, that's something we know to do as a project advance. So that's advisory. Then on investment, the way we invest is typically through financial intermediaries, local banks, right? We provide cheaper capital guarantee mechanism to local banks, sometimes with a sector focus. Let's say if we want to inject climate monies to make it even cheaper, we would provide that to a local bank, lines of credit for climate type of business and so on. And that can be structured in favor to the green hydrogen ecosystem, and I think that's the way to go. And the name of the game, in my view, there is to make all the parties and the moving parts singing along together, and there is a timing element to it which is essential. There's a policy element to it that is essential, so the planning that I was talking about, policy and planning from the government, this needs to be a requirement. The government needs to explain its expectations, show the way, and then DFIs, donor organization, etc., can fit into that vision with different mechanisms. So us more on the financing, but the SMEs needs a lot of capacity building as well. So then you can have consortium if you have a clear vision from the project and the government that this is a priority. Then people like myself and others can fall in place and support. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is there someone else who wants one question? We have time for one more question. Well, thank you all for your...
Okay, the question in the back.
Oh, yes. I will bring it from one woman to another woman.
Thank you very much. So a question for the colleague from the IFC. Just wondering whether there is any lesson that can be learned on spurring the renewable hydrogen market in Northern Africa, in particular, looking at what happened for renewable electricity. So in terms of developing markets, competitive markets, getting the private sector to invest into the country, and developing auction schemes, is there anything that can be learned from the experience on renewable power?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, at the end, the way I see it at least is that it's almost an extension of renewable power. You're taking a renewable project and one step further. So the first thing to say is that in Africa we're not operating typically in merchant markets, right? So offtake and de-risking the offtake is key. So it's we're likely to operate in a take-or-pay environment for a little while, from both local sponsors or international sponsors with local presence, and possibly from governments and utilities. So de-risking the offtake to me is the key. The second is, and what we've learned in the renewable space in the early days, so 20 years ago, is government support and planning. It's very difficult for long-term investors like ourselves, and as well as industrial players that I imagine are in the room, to make plan and start investing project development capital, equity into project, if they don't have a clear roadmap from the receiving party, which is the government eventually, on what this market will look like for them later on. And so energy sector planning, integrating our hydrogen sector planning, the roadmaps that we are talking about, is key. And the third part, which is similar to the renewable energy market at the beginning, is that at the beginning, if you remember, it's not the case today, but renewable power is not competitive with alternative. And so that is a market that has been seeded through public financial support mechanism. And so the same thing, the clarity, simplicity, and visibility of those over time will make or break your investments. And so, yeah. So I think those three lessons are the one, at least I'll take away. There probably others. I'm just thinking out loud. Yeah.
Thank
Well, thank you very much. I think time is up.
He's
Huh?
upset. He's upset.
I hope everybody enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're calling Mr. Matteo.
Oh.
Even zitten. Ging goed. Wat was?
Mag daar nog een keer?
Yes. Okay. So at the end of the day, it's always difficult first to find topics that have not been already addressed and discussed, and secondly to still keep the attention of those that still need to do all the emails of the day that have arrived in the meantime. So I will keep it short and crispy, and I adjusted a bit some of the slides. In my day-to-day, I deal with the projects, I deal with the markets. In our business development team, we look for opportunities and try to position our technology and help the developers get to maturity, so to say. But we have talked a lot about the market, so I'm open to answer questions and discuss about what are our areas of interest, what are our markets that we see in Africa. I myself travel a lot on the continent, so if you ask me about the port of Antwerp here in Belgium, I have no clue. But I know that, our turbines can arrive in the port of Tangiers, no problems. So I thought I'd talk a bit more about the technology, since Siemens Energy is a technology company, and we are active in the hydrogen space since years, I would say decades. The initial applications were, of course, more for industrial and chemical use, right? Small sizes. But we have, to a certain extent, our way to anticipate the hydrogen revolution that we are seeing now was to develop a large-scale electrolyzer. So our standard Sealizer 300 now, that we'll check later, is around 17.5 megawatts each. Okay, so that fits well for the hundreds of megawatts that certain projects today want. That fits a bit less with the small pilot projects that many players and utilities, etc., in these days want to develop, want to install. Somebody wants from us that I hear about electrolyzer, we will not anymore sell 1/3 of our electrolyzer. We are looking at supporting the hundreds of megawatts now. Notably, the latest one we are working on is with Air Liquide in Normandy, and I will talk about Air Liquide also in a second again. So colors are not really as I expected, but basically Siemens Energy. For those who don't know the difference between Siemens and Siemens Energy does whatever you see here, and whatever you would expect from us that is not here is probably with Siemens. So we deal with power generation, high voltage networks, hydrogen, oil and gas, yes, also oil and gas, and let's say the large energy management. Whenever you want to discuss industry automation and small and distribution of electricity, electric vehicles, etc., that's still Siemens. And here what I wanted to show, but it's not very visible here, is that one interesting feature of our portfolio, and that I would say you don't find in almost any industry player at the moment, is the fact that in our portfolio we integrate everything from the green electricity, notably the wind part with Siemens Gamesa, until the green hydrogen out of our electrolyzers, passing also through the grid. So there are certain projects in around the continent, notably Namibia, in Morocco, in Egypt, that are so big that you don't talk about just connecting two components. You're talking about developing a whole high voltage grid. And I like the comment that I was hearing before from the panel that one of the main obstacles in enabling the hydrogen transition is the grid. So if I wanted to show you what Siemens Energy does today to enable the hydrogen transformation, yes, the electrolyzers, but most importantly the grid. That's a key element of our portfolio, especially for the applications in Europe and the US. In Africa, the reinforcement of the grid is a problem independently of hydrogen, right? It's about access to electricity first and foremost. But since today we talk about hydrogen, I thought I'd give you a bit an idea of how our products then is put together and enters a more wider solution. You see here at the bottom the basic element of our electrolyzer, which is the stack, inside which you will find the proton exchange membrane. So our electrolyzer is a PEM electrolyzer. And 24 of these stacks grouped in these modules build an array, and then with all the balance of BOP, let's say, the piping, etc., and the controls around, forms the system, and that is our 17.5 megawatt unit. Why I'm showing you this, despite being myself in the business development part and not the engineering part, is because here it's clearly visible, I believe, where is the high-end part, technology-wise, of the electrolyzer, and where is the rest. So as long as you're talking about stacks, you really are dealing with the most delicate part of the system. We are talking about proton exchange membrane. So we manufacture those in a very controlled environment that I will show you later. All the rest is what we define as assembly, and that is the scope that we like to take into consideration for localization. And on the continent, this is a particularly interesting element, because localization is not only jobs. In the end, you want to automate a lot, so it's not just about how many people you employ, but about capacity building. And then if you have the workshop there to assemble them, it means you have the facility to maintain them. And so it's about operation and maintenance in the future, and not stop shipping the stacks back to the factory in Europe, but do everything there. And if you need to repair a stack, maybe you can ship the stack, but all the rest can be done in the local workshop. Okay. In terms of manufacturing, we have converted our Berlin gas turbine factory, part of it, a wing of it, in partnership with Air Liquide, to an electrolyzer manufacturing factory. And here you see the stacks I was mentioning. See, one stack is like this, right? And the very controlled environment, you don't see clearly here, but this factory that today is able to produce roughly 1 gigawatt of stacks per year, and has an easy upscale capability to 4 gigawatts per year, is very automated. So because of the level of precision and purity that you need to have inside the stacks, everything is automated. This means also that localizing whatever is happening inside this factory here doesn't add so much value in terms of job creation and capacity building in the country. all the rest that we still today do in Germany, in another factory of ours in Mülheim, the assembly into the electrolyzer, this is something that we would like to then also consider assembling elsewhere. We do it already in Eastern Europe. And then from these best cost countries, we need to see, okay, where does it really make sense to localize more. The problem that we face is having a visibility, if not a guarantee, of load of these workshops. Because because most likely we will work with local partners and industry players that today need to invest to scale up their infrastructure to be able to work with us on this. And will they do it on a dream that we will have 3 gigawatts of electrolyzers coming to the country? No. So we need to find the right balance between investments and belief that the market will then really happen, right? Since I heard talk about certification and certificate of origin, etc., I thought I bring up this slide. Being able to show that it's green is not really interesting, and so for now we don't hear talking too much about it, but it will have to be a thing. Green hydrogen producers and also those that use this green hydrogen to make green something else like fertilizers will have to seriously look at this and find a solution together with us, together with other excellences in the sector that provide the certification solutions, to be able to show that not only my electricity is green and that it has been transformed into green hydrogen in a Siemens Energy electrolyzer, but that then all the rest afterwards is also green. And the first African example that comes to my mind is OCP with their ambition to create green fertilizers, right? You can only imagine in a complex process like phosphate mining to fertilizers, how many steps and what complexity there is to certify something green. Not to mention the fact that standards are lacking in the industry. So our solution today limits to the green hydrogen production based on green electricity. And we focused on that just because together with TÜV Süd, we have worked to develop and to create a standard, don't ask me the number of ISO or whatever, but to create a standard that governs, that says, okay, this is the standard for green hydrogen. The rest of the value chain still is full of ancillarities, and so I personally, from a business development standpoint, look forward to find the right partners to team up and cover the whole value chain. I think the entire industry will then benefit of that. We have deployed the hydrogen part of this certification in an interesting project that we have completed. We are operating now in Chile. It's a demonstration project to create e-fuel, completely green e-fuel out of CO2 direct air capture, then green electrolysis, etc. in southern Chile. The project is called Haruoni, and it was a combination of various partners that got together, notably Porsche, that then has guaranteed the offtake of this green e-fuel for, I think the initial idea was to basically sell any model of Porsche that would be sold would come with a first full tank of synthetic green fuel created in this on this site. Now don't tell me how you ship that green fuel right from Chile. Anyway, the point is to show that it's not only on paper. You can really create green fuel. The technology is there. Now, how many times have you said today that the market is not there, the offtake is not there? We are here to do our part to create it. We believe that the cost of these electrolyzers will go down. Our efforts in R&D are mostly on hydrogen-related topic, even in the gas turbines, to make sure that every gas turbine in Europe will be able to burn the gas that is coming through the South Corridor or through any other blend. And then we team up with the local authorities in the countries I mentioned and others, because some of them are trying to learn the lessons that other countries got on oil and gas and other primary energy sources or natural resources that have left the country too quickly, not leaving enough behind. And so we also encourage them to not to rush into agreements that would basically repeat the same models. And I agree with those who said hydrogen should not be for Europe yet. Hydrogen can be for Africa. These today are using hydrogen that they produce locally, that they could sort. Right. So we can have a lot of uses in Africa and help the transition starting from there. I spare you the slide why Siemens Energy is the best partner for your. I think you read it between the lines, right? You may get the slides later on, but maybe if we have still 5 minutes or so, if anyone has any question.
Any question? One quick question.
You showed your project in Chile.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Siemens Energy was not just the supplier, but also integration engineer.
Yes.
So you had much more, let's say, involvement. You had a much bigger role than just being a supplier.
Correct.
And for the projects in Africa, would you envisage for Siemens Energy as well as an integration engineer, even a BC-like job?
Even before, we see that certain projects need our support from pre-FEED phase. And I know that there are many others, like engineering companies that can do that. I think there where we come with an inch of experience on top is the familiarity with the technology. That is also the part that is the most scary, right, for now. But yes, we want, and we are doing it, and we negotiate. If you want to know where we believe or where I see the market standing today, on average, the market is negotiating with us and others pre-FEED or FEEDs. We are there. So our factory is not yet delivering 1 gigawatt, but it's ready to do 4.
Thanks. Next question.
That was actually my question. Do you have capacity to deliver? And as you say, you have the capacity. So what would be the delivery times for
So let's say if we wanted to deliver an electrolyzer today, we are doing it. There is this project in Normandy that is getting those. So actually, manufacturing an electrolyzer is just a matter of weeks, putting the stack together and assembling it, much less than the 1.5 years that you need for a gas turbine or so. Maybe the more African-related question would be how much would it take for you to open a workshop in Morocco or so? And there it depends a bit on the environment, but I think that end to end, from the day we sign a contract to the day we can have an electrolyzer coming out of the workshop there, it would take round about 2 years. Quicker than this project will get their NTP probably.
Maybe a related question then, because a couple of years ago, it was the same as that the electrolyzer is not such the main critical component in the chain. The classical compressor.
For the hydrogen compressors.
Yeah, just for the time being.
Yes. Well, it would be true, I would say, I would agree if we were today running in a situation where electrolyzers are being ordered and at the same time with the same pace we have to deliver the related compressors. Because our compressor factory is relatively well loaded, maybe also well balanced with the demand of a mature market like the oil and gas, so not much surprise to be expected there. But as I said, since we are between 1 and 3 years away, let's say, from this peak coming in electrolyzers, I think the time to shift mature technologies and leave slots available for the compressor is there. The question is a bit how, when will we start taking the risk?
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well.
Okay.
Because in the beginning of the event it was mentioned, there is a certain tipping point to be reached where the technology as such needs to be sufficiently de-risked technically in order to de-risk the capital.
Yes.
So that tipping point, I mean, you mentioned the 1 gigawatt and 3 gigawatt in your slides. The 1 gigawatt is not yet there. Do you think the 3 gigawatt will also drag a little bit longer because of that, or do you really see in the 2 years ahead the tipping point coming in?
I would say no. I think the readiness of the factory is also just to be boiled down to the fact that space is there, the process of manufacturing it is known, we can copy paste, the manpower is there, the capacity is there, we can do it quickly. So for us, the risk is taken already in a certain sense, because we have invested, I think 30-40 million in this transformation, and now we are ready for the market. How long will it take? I think that the first gigawatt is taking a bit longer than what we expected, but I actually believe that if the first comes, then the second and the third will be less of an
Is that because of the de-risking?
Yes, because then somebody will have found the way. Maybe it is the fertilizers, but even just for OCP, I think they need in total, I think they were looking at something like 6 gigawatt of electrolyzers to be powered by around about 13 to 15 gigawatt of renewable energy. 6 gigawatt of electrolyzers is a big fraction of the global supply of electrolyzers, PEM including, and all the others confounded. So our factory would be enough to serve, OCP would be enough for our factory, just to say. So I think that after that, it could go quicker. If, of course, PEM and alkaline, etc., remain, if one technology goes in front of the others, then maybe the risk is there. That's something.
Yes, question. First, I'm consultant at IDT, so I know well Normandy project.
Okay, better than me. What you
better. I want to ask about performance test, because we have heard about China Longi electrolyzer. We didn't make performance with risk of hydrogen joining oxygen with risk of inflation. So for which size of electrolyzer are you sure that your technology will meet performance? Have you ever tested up to 1 gigawatt, up to 2 gigawatt? Or?
So, now are you talking about the performance of the single equipment or the performance of a plant?
Of a plant.
Yeah, that goes, I think, a bit beyond what we are then asked to do, because we will remain technology supplier and will rely on large-scale EPCs to basically integrate our equipment. Even if maybe commercially we are in consortium, one could argue that we are still liable for, okay, but our responsibility then will remain on the module, and the plant per se, that's something more for the EPC, so I couldn't answer.
Yes, but at least your module can make.
Yes, our module, yes. Taken per se, yes. Okay. But an interesting thing here, and I don't know exactly how many of you are on the financiers side, but I have seen certain projects being slowed down a bit by the fact that banks require performance guarantees, which they don't on even larger projects maybe, and the performance guarantees are always linked with LDs, right, damages. But the LDs that a manufacturer or an EPC provides are usually just an incentive to behave well. They are not going to make up for possible losses. So why put these breadcrumbs in the way of a bankability if they anyway will not cover by far the possible losses in case the project goes bad? Is it just an in-principle decision? I don't know who to look at here, but this topic of performance guarantees, I'm not really following why all this attention to that. You know?
I mean, for the technology provider is heavy. I mean, for the EPC, maybe for the client, it cannot be nothing against the financial risk. But for the technology provider, FZs are really heavy compared to what they invest.
Exactly. But let's assume that also that we go with it. Even and these LDs are probably going to erode our margin or eventually cancel it 2 or 3 times, and then we have a negative. But we are still talking about volumes that are, I don't know, in total a few percentage points of the total capex. It's nothing that is going to help the bank recover from whatever losses. So is it really so important to get to bankability that we provide this guarantee, that we or our EPCs or together give these guarantees? I don't know. It's not the case for large power plants where the sums are much. We give guarantees to our customers, but it's just a commercial agreement with us. The bank is not going to our customer and say, okay, tell me what are the performance guarantees that Siemens Energy gave you. And let me see if this is making the project bankable. No, they know that it's peanuts. So
just to add the comment, we are the developer for the project. I'm from the Mitsubishi Corporation, so I will introduce how the project and produce the hydrogen and sell it to the off-taker. Then when we achieve the FID, we have to make a promise to our client how many hydrogen we can deliver to you. What is the conditions for the specification of the hydrogen we can deliver to you.
Okay.
Then we have to ask the engineering company or the equipment provider like you to give us the expected spec of the hydrogen and the volume, the performance of the electrolyzer.
Okay.
And if you say you expect that you can do it without any guarantee, that means that we cannot make any commitment to the off-taker. We don't know, or we cannot allow the EPC contractor or the equipment provider to whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But then, even though the amount cannot fulfill all LD that we have to pay to the client, it is true, but that does not mean that we cannot ask you to guarantee something.
No. And towards you or towards an EPC, the discussion is fair, but in the case of gas to power project, as per my experience, it is not a criteria for lenders to agree on financing the project.
Yeah, so I'm no lender, so I think I leave that discussion to the actual lenders. But my point is not only from the lender's point of view, but also the sponsors' point of view. But we need a performance guarantee anyway.
Yeah, I will talk from the, I'll say from the oil and gas point of view, not from the power. I don't know the power, but from the oil and gas point of view, performance guarantee are always part of the scheme. It's even worse than that because there is a big, ugly thing called make good. Sometimes are put in the contracts, which is actually minimum performance that we need to. Sometimes unlimited make good. So I'm not trying to put words and ideas to our developers, but sometimes it's unlimited make good. This is the minimum performance that we need to achieve. And actually the LDs that you are mentioning are just applied on the difference between this minimum and the targeted performance guarantees. And this is where I think the gap contractually is making sense or not making sense. But if you look at from the refining and the gas monetization and LNG, most of the time this is the way you feel.
But then they make good. Who does that make good
it's
apply?
EPC, of course, with the fact, depending on the structure, if there is a license, a technology license, it's always, I would say there is a flow down contractually. It's a complex contractual setup. Nevertheless, yeah, it's.
But it's not back to back, so to say.
No. I mean,
There is a big.
there is some, I would say, some back-to-back, depending on the maturity of the technology.
Yes.
But then, when you apply a percentage on the contractual price, but the cake is bigger for the EPC contractor. So, so I would say the stakes are a lot bigger from the EPC contractor.
But on the principle, it's clear. Everybody has to give guarantees for its own scope, and we stand ready to do that. The question is then, how much, to which extent is this a make or break for the whole thing? And that's
one of the response elements is alignment of incentive. Financing is all about aligning incentives. So even if you're not performing and of course royalties are not compensating the lender, which eventually take the risk. As a lender, you need to make sure that every party in the game has something at stake.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But then you're opening the door for free riders and whatnot. So, and even in a guest core, I mean, yeah, perhaps you've seen cases, but if I do, we'll make sure we have a strong technical due diligence, including your contract and the EPC contract with providers. I mean, that's standard practice.
Yeah. The guarantees will be there. I'm just talking about the amounts, right?
Yeah, so the quantum, you have to be pragmatic. I mean, ideally, as a lender, you want to protect yourself from every kind of occurrence. That's the job of a lender. In cases you cannot do that, you need to make sure at least the incentives are properly aligned. Because then you're.
And how are these risks spread, right?
Exactly.
Who is taking which part?
Yeah,
No, that's
so,
right.
So you might take the risk at the end of the day because there is no other way given the quantums. But you need to make sure that the incentives are aligned.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mathieu. We've been running by. Last part was very good. Now we're going with Commons, by Commons. So let's hear what Mr. Alain will tell us this afternoon. 15 minutes, so after that we jump to North Africa panels, where we need to unpack most of what's happening there. The team just come down from Netherlands to Morocco, so we have to hear what they will tell us, what they do support in Morocco, give it to us today. And after this panel, we'll have if we can have 5 minutes for break, just to have coffees and get some again refreshments, so we need something small and jump again. Because the Moroccan ones will be very powerful panels.
All right. On the agenda, I think there's a long list of questions. If we were to talk about all those questions, I think we can stay in this room until tomorrow. So, in light of that, and also I was given only 15 minutes, I will cover some really high level and blend that a little bit with what Cummins, or in this case, Accelera by Cummins, which is the zero to large part of Cummins business, which I operate, and how our solution fed into some of those questions. And at the end, I'll have a quiz for everybody. See if you can answer all the questions on the agenda, because I will give you all the answers. Yes. No wonder. Okay. Since the topic started with pretty high level, so I'll start there too. This slide talk about clean or clean water energy source. I think in this room today we're talking a lot about green hydrogen, and other people also talk about blue and all of that. I think it's in the context of clean, or some people for zero emissions, versus a cleaner, which is reduced carbon emissions, but not necessarily zero, right? So probably kind of in that context. If you look at it from that context, this slide is kind of interesting looking at, by the way, many of those slides were borrowed, I referenced where I borrowed it, so not necessarily my original idea, but it's a more of how to synthesize different information together to deliver some points. So from this perspective, this slide actually shows a little bit the estimate on the left-hand side, the estimate of green hydrogen production cost from various regions based on available renewable resources, like energy resources. The message here is, as you can see, there are only a few places like Chile and Australia is probably better than this region, Africa, Middle East, and that. So we are sitting at very, very competitive place from a God-given resource perspective, right? From God-given resource to produce green hydrogen, which is all the renewable resources. From that perspective, you have there's advantage, right? The other advantage is in the collaboration we're talking about here between Europe, Africa, especially North Africa, it's also particularly important. Hydrogen is difficult to transport. The smaller or the shorter the distance is, the easier it is to transport, or the lower cost of the transport, and therefore making that collaboration much, much more important and effective. The other thing is, I guess I use the word God-given. As much as we're saying we really wanted to produce more in, say, Europe, there's not enough land, there's not enough sunlight, and all those things, you can't make it. Versus Africa, you do have more sunlight, more wind, more land. So that collaboration makes a lot of sense, right? To solve the problem that we're facing. So that's from that perspective. And blue, and also, so this is from clean to cleaner. The Middle East or MENA region also possess world most rich natural gas. That's best part of making blue, right? So if you look at from that perspective, this combination really makes sense. That collaboration does absolutely make sense from that perspective. Both today we're not arguing about clean or cleaner. It's all reducing carbon emissions. From that perspective, absolutely makes sense. Next slide is also borrowed from Arena, is talking about, again, the word technical cost of producing green hydrogen, meaning only looking at from technology content perspective, what does it take to produce hydrogen? This is score, relative score. As you can see, relative score, they are the highest, right? Which is why also this form I think makes a lot of sense, and doing this as a big part of that energy transition. Also borrow the slides, little bit of data, but I think it's not about how current this is, it's about the logic of the trend behind this slide. Some of you probably have seen this. This has been around for a couple of years. I added some notes in here to add my synthesis or thought process in this. First of all, there is a comparison of different technology, gray, blue, and gray. Today, everybody have a clear picture of gray is the lowest cost and blue is higher, green is the highest. May or may not be. That may be true, depends on location. If I were to look at, say, for example, in UAE, for example, where their green electricity today may be somewhere around 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Produce green hydrogen from there versus if they do actually have electricity green solar project, for example, have demonstrated in Abu Dhabi, around 1.5 cents, 2 cents. So now if they do have 2 cents to produce in this region, green hydrogen is maybe technically somewhere around $2 or so. Compared to gray, maybe in this area. So depends on where your source comes from. So this absolute definition of green is higher than gray may or may not be true. This is actually part of the discussion we had this morning. We're trying to compare some absolute things, take it out of context of certain logics and parameters and assumptions. And so it's dangerous to compare numbers without really look at the underlying driving factors that influence that cost. The range is pretty wide, such that comparison may be meaningless without really understanding what's the driving factor. So that's the first message. The second message is looking at, this goes into a little bit about the challenge and opportunities. Looking at compare, so the technology curve, where we see, and even for green hydrogen production. We're today here, roughly, from technology efficiency, cost, or that perspective, until here. So some of the region may or may not be able to improve, technology improvement may not be improved enough to change in the competitive landscape and the cost of hydrogen being produced, just because of geographical constraints, right? So what I'm saying is, as an example, so let's say somewhere, I think Germany is somewhere here, improve the technology down to here, it's going to be here. Probably going to be difficult, purely from production perspective. I'm not talking about at least from the production cost perspective. It would be difficult to compare to places where electricity costs could be significantly low, renewable electricity. Okay. Now, some people will say, well, may or may not be totally true because there is a utilization factor difference. But apple to apple, grain to grain, they are the same, roughly. Solar, actually, if you look at it, in Middle East, solar utilization is going to be higher, actually, than Germany, right? Because they have more sunlight during the day versus Germany. So, but you can't compare the mix of technology. So solar versus like somewhere else. Example, Saudi, for most of part, Saudi Arabia, for most part have solar energy mostly, not as much wind. Compared to, for example, Morocco, have excellent combination solar plus wind. So now that utilization factor will be very different. So you can't totally compare it in that way. So then make the cost comparison also a little bit more complex. So this shows a little bit about technology improvement absolutely will matter for a given region. And it may not matter enough when you compare different regions because of the geographical and different constraints. This is something, when we study different locations for competitiveness or those, I think those things must be part of that consideration, cannot simply be this region versus that region. Okay? The next is actually talking about, I'm jumping a little bit around this. Now we have hydrogen produced. And we keep talking about hydrogen being produced. Where can we use it? If we produce it, we're going to store it. Nobody uses it. What's the value? So we had to think about where to use it. where to use today. For example, we talk a lot about Africa. People talk about exporting. Exporting is another use. It has to be consumed to be something productive. So there's a lot of discussion about hard-to-abate sectors that uses hydrogen. This morning we talked about if you can electrify, for sure. When you can't, right, hydrogen, hard-to-abate sectors make a lot of sense. This goes back to when we build the business case, think about the use before think about selling. Because we have to sell to where it will be used. So think about those hard-to-abate sectors that I think you really have a whole lot more value from society perspective and also from social economic perspective. But those are hard things to say. Hydrogen production itself is already complex enough of ecosystem. Now we're adding applications where let's talk in the context of Africa. Look at those use cases. How many of those use cases or hard-to-abate sectors are actually produced or production in Africa country? Not many. They will ship their original thing to somewhere else to be processed. Therefore, we're creating even more complex situation where we ideally, we would say, make it and use it. Well, unfortunately, much of the use case is not there today. So that extends your investment horizon and make things more complex. Therefore, part of the issue today become more complex, which is, for me, I have always say Morocco have one of the best cases of producing green ammonia because they're right there, right? You don't have to deal with all the complexities. Much easier than many other places to think about. So I think, think about the use, how we produce it, where can we produce it, makes a lot of sense. So those, again, opportunities and challenges are all embedded in these 2 or 3 slides, in my view. So now kind of maybe jump now from that big picture to what Cummins does. Most of people probably know Cummins by our generators or engine, diesel engines or natural gas engines, some people know, and you probably heard us making hydrogen internal combustion engines as well, as a new thing in here. So we are a 100-plus-year-old company with roughly $34 billion revenue 2023. We're located in or impact in over 190 countries in the world. So we're present. So our core business is up here in these 4 segments: engine, power generations, components, and distribution, where distribution is where we serve the customer around the world, 100-plus countries, 190-plus countries. Components, this is interesting. Components are the critical technology that we Cummins use to build our engines and our generators. But we actually sell those to our competitors and our customers at the same time. They are our customers and competitors. So the point there is Cummins is very, very used to in a very collaborative way and competitive way. We sell our key technology to our customers. We compete with them. We put our engine in their trucks, and they produce their own engine in their trucks. We compete simultaneously. So in the electrolyzer or the zero technology, so below this part is talk about zero emission technology. So our traditional business is in these 4 segments. To support our customers in energy transition, we have the 5th business segment, which is called Accelera by Cummins. which is all the zero emission technology. Start with upstream of producing hydrogen with the electrolyzers. We don't sell molecules, sorry. That's not what we do, but we sell technology to enable that. So we sell electrolyzers, which I'll show you our roadmap. And then with that hydrogen produced, we have fuel cell technology, which will be used to produce power for both mobility applications and also stationary power for buildings and whatever. Today, whatever place we are in for electricity, you can imagine fuel cell going there as well as the battery for electrification people talk about. So our batteries are mainly for heavy duty vehicles and grid level kind of support projects, as well as for mobility on e-powertrains, e-axle, and traction system to enable the zero emission mobility on heavy duty side of things. So that's our overall business. So we're projecting the growth in zero emission significantly. And we already talked about this, our brand, Accelera by Cummins, is a part of Cummins, not a separate business, it's just a brand. And so this is a quick summary of our hydrogen technology product in the hydrogen ecosystem. So I'm going to start with the hydrogen ecosystem. People talking about hydrogen, start with the project developers, right? And the EPCs come in, build the hydrogen production factory, and then electrolyzer or hydrogen technology providers come in, which is where Cummins come into the picture. And then after that, people operate on a daily basis. And then there's off-taker take the hydrogen to distribute it, and then actually being used in actual application uses. We're in there as well, and then the end users. And the users, at the end of the day, is kind of like people you and me. Imagine tonight, 12 p.m. or 12 a.m., we flip the switch. Everything is zero emission. In 5 days, will we all have food on our table? No, right? So the point is, I'm as big of an enthusiast as many, but that transition must be a transition, not a switch, right? We have to be realistic. Therefore, how we actually transition from our current technology, at the same time enable zero emission applications where it makes sense, is vitally important. So continuing this process is important. So now let's talk about where Cummins, Accelera by Cummins, play in the hydrogen ecosystem. On the electrolyzers, we produce electrolyzers with both alkaline technology and PEM technology. We have research and development in solid oxide, but not in production. The roadmap for electrolyzer for our alkaline technology is actually pretty small size for industrial usage. Produce each individual electrolyzer up to 100 normal cubic meter per hour. Now you can have, for that kind of size, our solution is containerized, plug and play. Basically, you buy that solution, you plug in your electricity, you plug in the tap water, hydrogen comes out. In some cases, if you want upstream, you can have it as well. So that's the solution for the alkaline. For PEM small size as well, each container can produce up to the range of 200 up to 500 normal cubic meter per hour. Obviously, you can have multiple from that. When you have too many multiples, probably doesn't make any sense. So that's the smaller size of the alkaline. And then going up, individual unit can produce 1,000 normal cubic meter per hour. And then the next product is 5,000 normal cubic meter per hour. With 1,000, 1,000, and 5,000, you can make your today's size of electrolyzer project, everybody talk about, up to 500 megawatt, 600 megawatt, right? Now, can you build 1 gigawatt? Yes. Is it most optimal thing? May not be. Are we really truly ready to build 1 gigawatt today? There is a lot of talk of it. There are projects in the field towards that. I'm quite confident to say when the world is ready to build gigawatt project, Cummins will be there. Just like we're here with 5,000, world is talking about 200, 500 megawatt, we're there. So that's kind of like, which is why we also have this, what we call highlights XXL in the picture. So with that, we also talk about now on the application side with our hydrogen. With the fuel cell, the hydrogen go into high stack for the 30 kilowatt, 40, 45, 150, and 300. With all those, we can power small or medium duty and heavy duty vehicles, as well as producing electricity with 20, 40 feet containers or rack for small application, 100 kilowatt up to 2 megawatt per installation, okay, per container. So you can use multiple for that. So that from that perspective, you see our play in this ecosystem with electrolyzer and fuel cell. Finally, just our zero emission, or we call destination zero strategy. I referenced a little bit about. So today Cummins is continue to invest in the reduced emission. We will continue to improve our emissions. Cummins engine from 1980s till today, on diesel engine. The carbon reduction, or just basic emission reduction, has been more than 90%. Most people probably don't recognize that. So we'll continue to improve that. Also with introduction of hydrogen internal combustion engine. Then at the same time, we actually feel like by 2030, the world is actually probably more complex than today, because there will be more improved solution, there's more zero emissions somewhere along the way, and we see the path gradually kind of like go this, and then follow back down to more. Then the transitional technology will be reduced, and then the zero emission will start to take off. So we see that more towards 2050, 2040, 2050 timeframe. So that's how we see. So our strategy is enable both. Enable our customer to choose a solution that fit their business case at the time. We'll continue to invest to support that. With that?
Any question? Quickly? 2 questions? We can have a break quickly.
Yes, for example, in the future you have town like Lagos, where there is a lot of fuel oil generator. Did you make also comparison between gray, green, whatever it will be, with fuel to see, for example, your fuel cell, your electrolyzer can be used in a domestic way in town where they are not
we are in discussion with our customers. So the world economic way has quite a bit of content, right? It's pretty heavy work. Some people can have hydrogen for free as a byproduct of their, processes. Some may have to But so this is where I'm going to say something that you won't like, but it's true. Again, I'm going to say it all depends. There are cases that really make sense. There are cases I'll just say, actually, let me give you a story. I got a call from somebody from South Africa that the gentleman wanted to replace the diesel generators that they have with solar panel, produce hydrogen to support a farm, on a farm that has, I think, the needs of about 200 to 300 kilowatt usage. And then, we talked and I said, what really drives you wanted to do this? I want to have a cheaper electricity. I said, stop right there. I know I'm not going to make cheaper electricity with you have to buy hydrogen, I give you fuel cell, or you won't be, your land is not enough because you are on the farm, you don't want to use the farm land to put a solar panel on. So I said, without really had to do a lot of calculation, in my back of an envelope, I can tell you, I won't be able to give you that use case. If you find somebody else give you that use case, sure, because I don't want to waste your time. Now, on the other hand, right, I'm talking to somebody who produces some chemicals with hydrogen that's a byproduct that dump in the air. Of course, makes sense, right? So there's no single answer. Any other?
One question, because you say, okay, it's a transition, and then you show, of course, that your main target is now the fuel cell lines, all the way then, of course. So in between, of course, you have two steps. You could go for a dual fuel solution, where you mix hydrogen in the engines, and then provide, as Cummins, for instance, a retrofit kit in certain countries. Or you could go for, let's say, actually providing combustion engines that are able to use hydrogen. So how do you look at these? Are these intermediate steps for you, and especially in the African context?
Yeah. So let me clarify certain things. First of all, our technology roadmap, even for the engine, are not proposing the mix of, say, diesel or natural gas with hydrogen. That's not. We are having two solutions. You have either natural gas engine in your truck or a hydrogen combustion engine. Now, the way we're making engine is quite interesting. So maybe I go back to a chart, show you a picture. Okay, so this picture actually shows quite clearly how we're actually doing that engine. Look at all the red area and this red area versus the white area. In this, which is hydrogen internal combustion engine, all the red areas are exactly the same as the engine I'm producing today. The white area, which is the cylinder head gasket and above, is everything got changed, which is why you see all the white. So in other words, for that, we enable, you talk about retrofit, or your platform change become much, much easier because my space claiming is not that much different. If you were to do an entirely different thing, it's much different. So when you produce a vehicle, you make 100,000 a year. They are exact. You can't say, well, maybe here a little bit in there. They are exact. Therefore, you have to design to the point in the way you will enable that drop-in and or very small change, and that won't really change in, for example, my customer say Packard, right? I'm not asking them to design a new chassis in a way. So those are the considerations to enable that transition faster, to reduce the impact from the customer and the investment perspective. I don't hope that answers the question. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Maybe 5-minute break so we can tell. I know people are rushing, so we do the whole latest in 5 minutes.